Hey everyone, it's me Ace. I've been meaning to do a reusable cloth mask experiment since March, but I was having my final term assessments. I'm so glad to say that I'm done and dusted with my studies. For this experiment, I'm going to make a reusable face mask using nylon taffeta, which is water repellent. I will repurpose it from an umbrella that I don't use anymore. However, nylon taffeta is not exactly breathable, so I am going to divide the outer layer into 3 sections and I will use cotton fabric for the middle breathable part. I know it sounds silly because the middle part covering the nose and the mouth is the most important part, but just bear with me as I try to explain. At the moment, a surgical mask works best at filtering, and I was wondering how we could maximize the use of the surgical mask. I came across the Gill mask and was really inspired by it because it only requires a small piece of the surgical mask. So I wonder if I could create something similar with existing items that I have. For this first prototype, I only need half of the surgical mask to cover the middle part. This mask is also designed to be really close fitting so the air can only pass through the middle part and the filter. I'll take you through the steps of making it, and after that I will do a test and see if this prototype is a yay or a nay. I'm using an old cotton shirt for this experiment. I chose a stretchy one so I can use its hem as ear straps. I include the stitch roll when I cut the straps. The stitches, also called cover stitch, can help to maintain the stretch. Measure the length of desired ear loop and add 2 cm for seam allowance. Cut open shirt and place patterns A, B, and C. Use a chalk to trace the patterns and cut them out. Although this umbrella is old, its fabric is still in good condition, so I'll be using it. I removed the fabric by cutting off the threads attached to the metal frame. 2 umbrella panels is enough to make the mask. I'm using a standard size compact umbrella. Place the wrong sides together. I will use the decorative prints as the right side. Place pattern D and cut 4 pieces out. To ensure better fit, I've added darts for all patterns. Snip the dart legs or notches so it is easier to match out the dart for sewing. Use a pin to through the dart point and use a chalk or pencil to mark on the wrong sides. Join the darts using ruler and pencil or marker for easy sewing later. Do the same for the other 2 pieces. Fold the dart in half with right sides facing together on the inside. Pin in place and sew it down on the wrong side. Do for all 4 pieces. This is how the finished piece looks like. Flip 2 of them with wrong sides facing up. Match the other 2 pieces to them with wrong sides facing each other. Pin in place and run a stay stitch along the edges to hold both pieces together. Do the same for the other side. Next, I'm going to sew up the darts for the other patterns. For pattern B, fold it into half and sew the dart on the wrong side. Do the same for pattern C. For pattern A, there are 4 darts to be sewn. Fold the piece into half. First, I will sew the top and bottom darts on the wrong side. After they are done, fold it up and sew the side darts on the wrong side. This is how it looks like when it's done. Still working on pattern A, fold 2 times down the top on the wrong side. Each fold is 1 cm. Pin in place and run a top stitch across. For pattern B, flip piece to work on the wrong side. Fold 2 times up the bottom. Each fold is 1 cm. Pin in place and run a top stitch across. I'm going to assemble the outer layer now. Taking pattern C, I match both sides to the longer sides of umbrella pieces and sew them down. The seam allowances should fold nicely into the middle portion. You can also use iron with low heat to press them into position. Next, I'm going to attach the ear straps. Place strap on the right side, 1 cm down the top where the seam allowance ends. Pin it in place and place the other end at the lower part. Also make sure to position strap correctly so it won't come out twisted. Run a stay stitch down and do the same for the other strap. Taking pattern A, match the right side of fabric to the right side of outer layer. Turn the pieces upside down. I'll be sewing the bottom of the mask. Match the middle darts on the right sides. I make sure to push the seam allowances to the middle before pinning them in place. Line the pieces up. and run a stitch along the edges 1 cm from edge. After that, I match pattern B's needle dart to the outer piece, right sides facing each other. I'm working on the top now. Just like what I did for the bottom, I make sure that the seam allowances are pushed to the middle before pinning them down. Line the pieces up. Run a stitch along the edges 1 cm from edge. Clip the seam allowances for top and bottom. Make sure not to clip past the stitches. The snips will release the fabric tension, so when I turn the right side out, the seams will lay flat. I'm going to do understitch for the top and bottom to keep the inner edges from rolling towards the outside. Working on the top piece, push all the seam allowances towards the top. Run a stitch down on the inner piece, about 2 mm from seam line, catching all the seam allowances at the same time. Do the same for the bottom. This is how it looks like after the understitch is done. The last step is to run a top stitch on the 2 sides. Now that the mask is ready, let's do the test. I cut the surgical mask into 2. You can also use inserts sold by companies such as CYC. Slotting one of them into the pocket and making sure that the seam lines are properly covered. Now I'm going to do a spray on the middle section and see if there is any water leakage on the inside. Okay, I sprayed quite a bit. Let's have a look. The filter is still dry on the inside, so I guess it's a positive sign that this design might actually work. I wouldn't say that this design is a yay. It is a first prototype and there are factors that can affect its efficacy, such as the type of cotton to use for the middle section. I've worn it a couple of times. It is pretty airtight, so it can be a little difficult to breathe. I think there is room for improvement and is an interesting concept to explore further. Let me know what you think of this prototype in the comment box below, and if you have other interesting ideas, do share with me as well. Also, if you are making a reusable mask of the 2 common styles, I've shared some tips to improve the usability. You can find them on my blog with all the templates, including the experimental one using nylon taffeta. Don't forget to click subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!